last-minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. It's okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always as
Ryan.
simple as 1, 2, 3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast with Derek Brown on the NASM Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Mindful Drinking Podcast, where we talk about tips and information that you can use to drink more mindfully. I'm your host, Derek Brown, and today we are going to talk about something I did for a long time, which is bartending. Oh my gosh, I bartended for many, many years, and I can tell you that bartending is a full contact sport. There is so much that happens behind the bar. First, you're going to be on your feet, in many cases, 10 to 12 hours. Which is in itself not easy to do. But along the way, you're going to be shaking, muddling, stirring, doing all the things that bartenders doing, talking to guests, absorbing the psychic energy of guests or the emotional energy of guests, whatever it is. And you are going to be trying to keep people at bay, because it turns out that while 90% of the people at a bar behave themselves, there are a percentage of people who do not. And then there are even a smaller percentage of people that come with ill intention. And it just makes the whole thing, you're like a circus conductor. And the whole thing is one giant circus that you have to deal with. Now, we're going to talk about bartending. And I think that if you're not a bartender, you don't have to tune out right now. There's lots of other things that I think are going to connect to your work, whether you work on your feet all day, whether you are working in a customer service facing job, whether you have to encounter people who are drinking, whether you yourself want to know how to drink in a bar without looking like a total jerk. All of this are things that we were likely covered today. So I want to introduce the person that I brought on to help us discuss them, who is a old friend of mine, a wonderful human being, the executive director of Safe Bars, the founder of the Healthtender. We'll get into that, what that means. The president of Baltimore Bartender's Guide. By the way, I love Baltimore, a great cocktail scene. And someone with degrees in kinesiology and health coaching. She's perfect for this discussion. Welcome, Amie Ward.
Hi, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And, we've known each other for a while, so this is going to be a real casual conversation, but there's lots to talk about. And I just want to dig in right away with what inspired you to bring movement and wellness into an industry that is not known for, well, let's say this kind of movement and wellness.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't normally make a lot of sense to people, but because my background is in kinesiology, like I'm a total jock. I've been into sports my entire life. I love the body. I always knew that I wanted to do stuff with the body. But I also chose bartending and hospitality as my career because I fell in love with the people and being able to talk to strangers all day long. But it was a pretty easy melding together of those two things. After a while of bartending, like I'd been bartending part-time and then switched over to full-time about 10 years ago, and noticed very quickly that my peers were either, drinking excessively, their bodies hurt all the time, or I was constantly made fun of for bringing my own food to work and having snacks in my apron and whatnot. And I realized that there was this gigantic gap of the things that I knew from being in the world of health and wellness and with the bartenders themselves. So decided to bridge that gap by starting my own wellness company with the Healthtender and really making things accessible to our peers rather than feeling like they're being preached at, which, nobody will listen to if when they get that kind of attitude towards people. But when I started approaching things with like how you can make snacks that are super easy and quick and can fill you up and can give you calories on a regular basis, and told them how to showed them how to move their bodies before and after work so they weren't in so much pain, and talked about shoes and different things that they could help themselves, everybody became incredibly receptive. Like there was not a single person that was like, we don't need this. Yeah, it was literally like, oh, you're saying in a way that makes sense to us, and you've got the buy-in already because you are a bartender too. So you know both things that you're talking about. So I just found a really accessible way to talk to our peers about how to live a slightly healthier and less in pain life behind the bar. And he kind of took off from there, and it's grown tremendously since, I started the Healthtender officially in 2015, and you can see so many people are getting involved in health and wellness that are also in our industry, and there's more access to wellness resources than there ever was. So it really took flight, and I'm super happy to be a part of that.
That is amazing. Yeah, no, the whole journey I've gotten a chance to watch, and it's amazing to see. I wanted to point out, because you mentioned you're a jock, and I wanted to point out that not only are you a jock, but you've lifted a car before, right? I mean, literally
Lifted a car. Yeah. I lift cars and I pull trucks for fun.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of bona fides there. And you started to get into the Healthtender. And so I guess I want to pick up the journey from there. Talk a little bit about what you've done, what you do as the Healthtender, and how that came about.
Yeah. So it kind of range, you have certifications as well. So, you got to stay within the scope of what is accessible to you.
Mhm.
I had the degrees in kinesiology already, but I do believe that having that certification lands a little bit easier for people than saying, hey, my background's in kinesiology, where I have to explain what that means each time. But I talked about, in terms of nutrition, we're restricted in what we can talk about for nutrition, but it was like, hey, here are the basics of nutrition. Also, look at what you're doing every single day. This is where I started equating people to be bartenders to being athletes, and telling them that they needed to fuel their body as such. So anything would range from being able to teach them tiny snack packing routines and meal prepping that could last them an entire week and would only take about an hour to do, to doing movement classes that were really open for people that, some people in our industry go to the gym and they're great with it. Some people have either felt ostracized or don't feel comfortable going in there. There is both equipment that you don't understand. There's also people who insert themselves into your workout where they have no business doing that. Yeah. So I would make these movement classes that were designed for the movements they'd be doing behind the bar anyways. And it would be a sneaky way of teaching them how to work their core and engage their core behind the bar, because of the two, there's two main things I think that hit bartenders because of the way bars are designed, regardless of how you're designing them, just because of what requirements are for health department and things like that. But like lumbar lordosis and thoracic kyphosis. So like the duck butt and the hunched over back is what happens to bartenders because everything is pitched in front of them with the way that the bar is set up. So I'd teach them different movements of how to engage their core so they could reassess their posture and feel a little bit better behind the bar. Taught them before work stretches and after work stretches. Started talking to them about mindfulness. So we, it's been a wide range of different things that were happening. And I'd say probably during the pandemic, I'd already gotten traction before then, but because of the pandemic and everybody was stuck inside, I was teaching workout classes on Zoom 4 or 5 days a week. And there were people from all over the country that were joining in to be able to do these things. And they are still using those same things that we worked on during that time in today. So I love that. And then, I teach regular, like stand up in front of a classes of talking about the risks associated with being in the hospitality industry and ways to counteract that. Like not talking about it as if it's a bad thing. It's just more of an awareness, like being the same way you're more mindful about what you're putting into your body. You need to be more mindful about the industry that you're working in on a regular basis and how to counteract that, because very few bar owners and people who have that power provide resources for those who are in the industry to be able to have healthcare, to be able to have a regular meal or act like even a break to take to have lunch or dinner or whatever it is. So giving them little like life hacks of how to work around the system while we are still on the back end trying to fix the way hospitality operates in terms of the way it treats people.
I love that. I love that. And there's so much information you just gave us, but in that, I just want to pull one thing out. What is one simple movement that somebody could take away from this if they work in a job where they're on their feet all the time? And you described it as, what was it, hunchback and duck butt? Or is that the terms? Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. First time duck butt has appeared on this podcast.
Yes.
But not the last time. So do share. What do you think? What's a good simple thing that they can do?
So for those two things specifically, I try to teach people about like tucking their pelvis forward. Like think about pulling your pelvis towards your belly button, or your belly button back towards your spine, as a way to kind of get that tilt back where it needs to be in their pelvis, because that automatically kind of helps with the shoulders, being able to roll them back into a natural position. I think when we if we try to tackle the top part first, the thoracic kyphosis, the hunchback, and you tell people to straighten up their shoulders, they end up doing too much of an arch that could be detrimental to them. So I think just a simple pelvic tilt forward is really good. And I teach people how to do that by laying on the ground with their feet on the floor and knees bent, and try to make their back flat. So, and I'm doing it in my chair now, which is why I'm like going down there.
Me too. Let me do this too. All right.
So it's the simple pelvic tilt forward, and that will really start to engage every part of your core anyways, from the actual abdominal muscles to the back muscles and the glutes. Everything kind of starts setting in order when they do that, and they feel so much better when they are actually engaged. Their core is engaged when they're behind the bar.
Right. Yeah. And imagine when you were mentioning it, I was thinking about when people are hunched over, like with their phones too. That's not that different. Maybe this is something that a lot of people could take with them, whether or not they work behind the bar. But I also want to put in context, I mean, the most amount of accidents that happen in a restaurant are behind the bar. And just to give a little bit of the context for those of you who aren't bartenders, if you work in a kitchen, the lights are very bright. You have all of the floors, or not all the floors, but many of the floors have padding on it that help, reduce stress on your feet and your back. Ultimately, you have, these stainless, everything is kind of set up to be a workstation. When you go behind the bar, all of a sudden it has to look sexy and cool. And so you don't really get you can't turn the lights up. You can't wear, like certain things that might be supportive of your back or whatever. And so now it's a totally different, and plus you're working with knives in the dark. I mean, everything, it's just very dangerous. Plus you're working with alcohol. So I guess, people don't really understand how much resilience it takes to work behind a bar.
Oh yeah. And you have put together some bars in the past that actually have room to move around in the back behind the well, but like most of them, we're also talking about maybe there's 24 inches of space if you're lucky. And sometimes it's a little bit more than that you don't get to move naturally. You have to move sideways, you shuffle. You don't necessarily get to move with a normal gait that you would when you're walking without restrictions around you. And the simple nature of doing your job right and having your mise en place like all in the same space, that ends up being detrimental to the body, because if you're doing your job right for bartending and everything is right here, it also means you're static and you're not moving the way that your feet are designed to move too.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things aside from like slip, trips, and falls that are always there. And then repetitive motion injuries are basically what puts most people in the grave for their bartending career, because tendonitis or whatever has been happening with their hands, carpal tunnel, tendonitis, any of those different things can wreck people's bodies.
Yeah. Wow. It's totally true. And listen, I was just, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about a couple things that people might need to know. One is, what is a well? And two is, what is mise? Because I heard both those things, and I realized that if somebody is not working behind a bar, they might not know what those are. Can you just define those real quickly for us?
Yeah. So a well would be your workstation. Same way as if I'm at my office right now. So my workstation is here. It's my desk. I've got my computer, my monitor, and all the things that I need to be able to do my job. It's the same situation. So our well, or your pit, whatever you want to call it, has your ice. It has your a speed rack, which is a small plastic rack that allows you to put bottles that you're going to be using on a regular basis. It could be batch bottles for cocktails that you have, or the main base ingredients that are in the cocktails that are on your menu that you know you're going to be using the most frequently. It's a space where your garnishes are going to live, your bar tools are going to live, your juices are going to live. And with that mise, like everything in its place is the mise en place. It's everything you need to do your job, and it's always in the well or very close to where that well is. So yeah.
Perfect. So everybody knows now, but a lot of us have worked in the hospitality industry, but almost all of us have been on the other side of the bar. So I'm going to switch topics a little bit from behind the bar to in front of the bar, because not only have you brought this issue around wellness and safety behind a bar, but you're bringing it on the other side of the bar too, with Safe Bars, and you are the executive director. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what Safe Bars does.
For sure. Safe Bars actually was started in DC in 2013 by Lauren Taylor. And she was a self-defense expert her entire life. She had friends in the bar industry who recognized that there was reports coming out of things that are happening in the bar industry where there's a lot of instances of harassment and aggression that was happening to people who are on staff working at the bars. So she started this journey of Safe Bars to teach everybody bystander intervention, which is essentially when you see something happening, you do something about it. And the target for this was the staff of hospitality. So we go in and train the staff of hospitality spaces, anybody that serves alcohol essentially, and I'll get to that alcohol portion in a second, what to look for, like what problematic behaviors look like in your bar spaces, because they can be, it's the seemingly innocuous and very subtle things that have happened since you started in the industry, since I started at the age of 14, that people brushed off and either said, that's just the way it is, or that's just the way that they are, that nobody said anything about, and it allowed for worse behavior to happen. So we teach them what those behaviors can look like between guests, between staff and guests, between staff, whatever it might be. And then we give them the tools to actually intervene in a safe and non-confrontational way. And it's super easy to do because bystander intervention is the same thing as hospitality. Some of the intervention skills that we talk about, like we have the 5 Ds: direct, distract, delegate, document, and delay. Direct is like directly acknowledging that something's going on. And that can be, hey, everybody, how's it going right now? Or how's your drink? How's your food? How's your whatever? How's your night going? Which is something we say 100 times behind the bar on every single shift. So we lower the bar to getting in there and being able to intervene and do something, because it's the same thing as being good at your job. It's checking on your guests and making sure that they're okay. So we give them all the tools for that to be able to intervene in a safe way, so we can keep the spaces, all of our bar spaces, safe, not only for guests, but also for staff that are working there, get the repeat customers back, be able to have like a good space, and with the long-term goal of like reshaping the hospitality industry so we can set the precedent for how people should be behaving in our spaces. And the reason why we work specifically with people who serve alcohol is because alcohol is the most commonly used drug to facilitate some kind of sexual assault or aggressive behavior in any circumstance. It doesn't have to be in a bar. It can be outside of the bar. It could be anywhere. So that's in 96% of reported cases, which means that we know we're already working with alcohol. We're very fully aware. Well, most of us are fully aware of what we're doing and that we are peddling poison for a living, and that's okay. We train ourselves how to safely serve people so they're not overserved. Now we have to safely manage the consumption of that alcohol and what people can use it for, because people who are doing the bad stuff or problematic behaviors are using alcohol to either incapacitate somebody or to use it as an excuse for whatever their behavior was. Like, oh, I was drunk. That's not me. It only happened because I was drinking. So we try to like lower that barrier to entry in terms of getting people involved in intervening, and also dispel a bunch of myths about what alcohol is. Alcohol is not the cause of any of these things. Only people who aggress are capable of committing those acts of aggression, right? It's not because of alcohol. Right. So we try to nix that narrative that's been going around. And we also dispel any myths, which most people in our industry, I think, are really good at. But trying to blame the person who was consuming alcohol for being harmed in the first place, or why were you drinking, or why were you doing that. It's called victim blaming and shaming. So we identify that, put a label on it, and tell them that is absolutely not the case. But these, bartenders know that already.
Right.
We're just equipping them with all the tools and the knowledge to let them know that this is not okay. You also are okay to advocate for yourselves. Your bosses are okay to advocate for you as well. But like, you all need the tools to be able to have a safe space. And we talk a lot about how power dynamics are involved in that, like why people might be committing acts of aggression. It could be because they're coming into your space and they see a hospitality worker as something lower than them because they're paying and you're serving. That's not a real thing. Power is a very, social structure in the way that it is. So we dispel all those myths and really make sure that people get into a very collaborative effort to keep their bar spaces safe. And people love it. Like, there's nobody that said this was the worst training I've ever had. They're like, oh, I was not expecting that. These are actual, real, applicable tools that we can utilize. And all of our trainers are hospitality vets as well. So they're bartenders or servers or sommeliers, you name it. We've got every range of hospitality folk that is actually training these people too.
That's awesome. You're listening to the Mindful Drinking Podcast, and I'm your host, Derek Brown. We're talking to Amie Ward, and we're talking about Safe Bars, which is a training program that helps people learn about many things, one of which is bystander intervention. And Amie, I have been through this training a few times now, and I have to say, as even a seasoned bartender, there were so many things that I learned in it, many of which you have already talked about. But one of the things that I didn't really understand is just how some of these behaviors that start out as sort of these, seemingly innocuous things, right? Like somebody starts to kind of just like gingerly hit on somebody. That person's not interested, but they continue and they start, kind of picking at it and doing these little behaviors, little by little, trying to break down their barriers. And as a bartender, I used to think, I'm only in it if somebody's hurting somebody else, right? If somebody's like striking out the bar, that's not my job to intervene. But then I started to recognize, there were moments where somebody was just trying to test whether that person was drunk enough yet. They're trying to buy him shots. They're trying to get him into a place where they were lowering their guard. So I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit, because that was eye-opening to me.
Yeah, absolutely. So those testing behaviors is what you're referring to. We ask people to identify common behaviors that they see in their bar, and we ask them to put them on a chart. We have this chart that's hanging up, and it has a line with 2 arrows on it. On the left side, you see the word annoying, in the middle is dangerous, and on the right side is life-threatening. And we talk about, somebody asking inappropriate questions. Where would you put that on the board? Somebody's like, I think it's annoying. Okay, great. What about somebody asking overly personal questions? Like, do you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, partner? Where do you live? Things like that. Where would you put that? And we're like, that could be annoying, but it could be dangerous too. And like, okay, cool. We'll put that here. We identify what those are in that annoying category as those testing behaviors, because not only are they testing, is an aggressor testing the target of their advances, they're also testing us, the bystanders, the environment. They're testing to see what they can get away with. And I think when people, just like what you were describing, when people understand that they're part of the interaction that's happening as a bystander, that gives them the ownership that they need to feel comfortable doing something. And again, checking in on somebody, and we try to encourage, like, the cost of checking in is a goose egg. Maybe we're reading the situation wrong, but I'd rather read a situation wrong than let harm happen to somebody else.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that, like, what it really comes down to is I would rather apologize to somebody for misreading a situation than let somebody take advantage of somebody else, right? Yeah. So as simple as telling somebody, "Are you okay? Is this situation, is it safe for you?" Obviously depending on the level of confrontation, right? Yeah. Because sometimes you really are facing somebody who's drunk and belligerent, and you have to maybe deal with that in a different way.
Yeah. And also, like, one of the words you just said too, confrontation is what we're talking about. There are people who are uncomfortable with confrontation, but that's because the word confrontation has a negative connotation associated with it. Confronting something is really facing something. It
Right.
doesn't have to be bad. And when we're saying that you need to do something about it, it's not, hey, jerk, get out of the bar. It is, hey, y'all, how's everything going? Did you know each other before you were here today? Or like, did you meet here? It gives people an opportunity to explain more and gives you time to process what's happening, so you can make a better judgment of, do you need to figure out how to separate these two, or do you need to close out this person's tab and tell them to have a good night? But because what we do every single day is converse with humans and provide an experience for them, that interaction, that intervention skill, being a good bystander, is absolutely equivalent to good hospitality, because we're doing it already every single day.
Yeah, that is great. And and just to remind people, the stakes here are, that they range from, a mild annoyance, but in some cases sexual assault, and in other cases it could be human trafficking. I mean, there's so many things that happen that come through the bar, because the whole experience of humanity is at the bar, which is incredible. And I when you were talking about like us serving poison, I was just imagining in my head like somebody come at the bar and you're holding a rattlesnake, and each person comes up and you just a little bite. Let me just, no, you can just have another little bite, and that's really what it is. It's not to say alcohol is bad or people who drink alcohol is bad. There's no judgment here. I drank enough alcohol. You drink alcohol. That's the way it goes, but it's to say it can't be taken lightly.
Yeah, it's all part of responsible service. Like, not just like counting drinks to see how quickly somebody is drinking and how you might assume that they're processing that alcohol in their body, but it's responsible service, and it's responsible maintenance of the people that are in your bar. Yeah, right. We're doing this thing, but we're also not doing it, again, not taking it very lightly. We're doing it in a comprehensive way, and that safety extends not just to the person who's consuming, but the people that they're interacting with as well.
Yeah, that's true. And so how does mindful drinking, you think, work into all this with no and low alcohol cocktails, and kind of taking an approach of not just responsible drinking, but really like asking yourself that why you drink in the first place?
I think it's not a loaded question, but I can go so many directions with that. There's like,
it was totally loaded. I gave you a loaded question, Amie.
And in terms of the mindful, like, just because someone, I think it's important that people understand that just because someone is also not imbibing with alcohol at the bar, or they're drinking low ABV or no ABV cocktails, that they still can be aggressors. They also can be aggressed upon. Like, the absence of alcohol, it's the presence of being in our world and in the hospitality industry that I think people need to take more into consideration about. I mean, I don't judge people who drink. When people ask me for assistance because they want to stop drinking or they're looking to do things like that, I have a million resources in the world and can help them out with that. But I think like taking alcohol and weaponizing it in the way that people do when I'm talking about safe bar stuff is really crappy. And I love demystifying that and letting people know that alcohol is not the issue, because a person can be sober and still be a POS. So like,
yeah, that's right.
I think like the biggest thing is just being more conscientious of the conversations that we're having with people. We were bartending in a time where like the craft exploded at the same time as we were like already entrenched in the industry. Yeah. And now there's a whole lot more people, I think, that are in the industry that are just interested in making esoteric drinks or something that's over the top, or using really cool skills and technically, amazing things, but they forget the hospitality part of it, where like being able to have conversations with people, which I think is what truly makes a bartender a good bartender and makes them good at hospitality. So I don't know. I think I might have rounded about that question, did it the right way. Like
great.
Alcohol
It was
great. is never the problem. It's like the people that are in it. So people need to have their own discussions and relationship inquiries about their relationship with alcohol at all times. I think demystifying that alcohol is the problem in these situations is a huge thing, and letting them know that they could still be sober and still be cruddy is eye-opening for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that, a lot of people, when they, start to drink less and ask them the question why, they realize that ultimately they have to work on themselves. And that had nothing to do with the alcohol. The alcohol just was providing some cover for it. So I think that's a great way to address it. And I do think that, at the end of the day, people have to, mindful drinking is an important thing. And bars are such a critical part of our social experience. But the most important thing to me isn't the drink, right, itself. It's not even the bar. It's the quality of our conversations. And I think you were suggesting that and saying that, and I love that. I think it's a really great point. And so I have just two more questions that I wanted to ask you on both sides of the bar. I wanted to ask you, is there's one piece of advice that you would give bartenders right now that would help support their wellness behind the bar, and then turn it around, and on the other side of the bar, what is one piece of advice that a customer or guest could use to support their wellness?
Yeah. For the, taking that mindful consideration in for bartenders, I tell them to start trying to work on their mindfulness in terms of their entire body. So wake up in the morning and do a body scan, like a 30-second body scan, starting at your toes and working your way all the way up to the tips of your head, to find out how you're feeling. Like, understand if there's any kind of feelings or pain that is existing in any of those areas, and be mindful of it, be conscientious of it. See if there's work that you can do on it, which is whether it's stretching or rolling or just moving around in ways that prep you for your shift. So being more mindful of how your body is doing, because your body is screaming at you all the time about how it's doing, and we just ignore it because we're living in the capitalist society where we go and have to make money and all that. But stop for a second, wake up, stay in your bed, and just wiggle your toes and wiggle every little part of your body up to the top of your head to make sure that you understand how your body's doing that day. And for guests, and for guests on the other side of the bar, if we're looking at them being able to understand their own wellness, understand why you are sitting at the bar. Like, a bar is a beautiful space. It's the third space where we're able to celebrate, commiserate, be sad, be happy, whatever it might be. Like, understand what your relationship is with the bar. Is the bar a good, happy spot for you to be? Is it something like what you're discussing? Like, is it masking something that you are not actually addressing? Reevaluate your relationship with the bar. The bar is a beautiful space, so don't take it for granted, and understand if it's a place that's fueling the best parts of yourself, or if it's fueling the parts that need the most work. And like, if you're, this is on bar people as well, but like, look at that menu and look at the non-alcoholic options that are there and give them a whirl. Actually try them out, because there are very good things that exist in this world. And we've watched the growth happen in, just in the last couple of years, explosion, but it's been around for a while. But watching some of these non-alcoholic libations that are coming out are amazing and fun, and people should not be afraid to try them out. They come with a lot of work and a lot of expensive ingredients. So that's why they cost as much as everything else does. Like, try it, because there is some stuff that will absolutely blow you away. Because I also find like it's so much more culinary focus and the flavors that you get out of the NA world versus how alcohol is, because you've got natural burn and everything. Ethyl alcohol does magical things to your brain and to the drink itself. But take a spin in the non-alcoholic lane. There's like so much good stuff out there for everybody. And I hope everybody's getting more on board with it. Clearly they are, or else this industry wouldn't be as huge as it is right now.
All right, so we might not have this podcast if it wasn't for that. So, well, tell the good people out there where they can find you, and on social media or website, whatever you want to share.
Sure. So for Safe Bars, we're at Safe Bars HQ, like headquarters. For Instagram, we have safebars.org for our website. For the Healthtender, I am at the Healthtender, and thehealthtender.com for the website. And if you like pictures of cats and me lifting heavy objects, my other handle is Bitters Queen. So there's lots of different ways to see me and follow all the silly things that I do on a regular basis.
Gosh, well, I'll continue to follow you because I love watching pictures of cats and you lifting heavy things. It's fantastic. So with that said, thank you so much, Amie, for coming on today. You added so much to this topic. And for all of you out there, I just want to say thank you for tuning in. And don't be shy. Add a comment, like something, send me an email. I get some really great emails from some of you talking about the show, and I love to receive them. They just really validate the work we're doing here. So thank you so much. And as always, here's to mindful drinking.